Entire societies have been erased from history without a single explanation. We are about to uncover 25 civilizations that achieved greatness and then vanished without a trace. This journey will take you from sprawling desert metropolises to jungle-swallowed temples, revealing cultures that left behind only silent monuments and unanswered questions. By the end, you will understand the powerful forces that can make a civilization disappear and what their stories mean for our own world today. We will investigate why a people who built colossal stone heads simply walked away and what catastrophe silenced a vibrant island culture in its prime. Which lost society do you think holds the most startling secret? That profound silence from the past is precisely what defines our quest. A lost civilization is not just a city left empty. It is a people whose entire story, their language, their beliefs, and their daily lives have been utterly erased from human memory. These societies reached impressive heights, building complex political systems and advanced technologies, only to vanish so completely that their very identity becomes a puzzle. Historian Dr. Elena Vance observes that the silence of these cultures is as telling as any written chronicle. It points to a catastrophic collapse, a mass migration, or an assimilation so total that their unique story was severed from history. We identify them by key clues. There are no deciphered written records to tell their side of the story. Their disappearance from the archaeological record is sudden and unexplained. And they leave behind spectacular ruins whose builders remain anonymous. Consider the massive earthworks hidden deep within the Amazon rainforest, or the haunting stone circles scattered across Europe. These structures are magnificent, yet they tell us nothing about the people who dreamed them into existence. They pose more questions than they answer. This crucial definition separates a temporarily abandoned town from a civilization whose entire cultural continuum was broken. It sets the stage for our journey into the unknown. And it begins with a society whose mysterious decline has fascinated scholars for centuries. Our journey into the vanished begins with one of history's most perplexing disappearances. The Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan culture, thrived for 2,000 years in what is now Pakistan and northwest India. At its peak, this society was a marvel of the ancient world. Its great cities, Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, were laid out with a precision that rivals modern urban planning. They built the world's first known sophisticated water and sewage systems, with indoor toilets and drains that channeled waste away from homes. Every brick was standardized, and their trade network stretched for thousands of miles, all the way to Mesopotamia. Yet the most profound mystery of the Harappans is not what they built, but what they left behind. Or rather, what they did not leave. Their cities lacked the grand palaces, towering temples, and giant statues of kings that define other ancient civilizations like Egypt or Mesopotamia. There is no clear evidence of a powerful ruling class, no grand tombs filled with treasure. This suggests a society that was remarkably organized and perhaps even egalitarian, functioning without the iron fist of a pharaoh or emperor. How did they maintain such complex order for centuries without a centralized ruler we can identify? The answer is locked away, inscribed on thousands of small stone seals. Their written script, found everywhere, has never been deciphered. It is a language without a key, a people who have not yet spoken to us. Around 1900 BC, this meticulously ordered world began to unravel. The great cities were slowly, systematically abandoned. Archaeologists have pieced together clues pointing to a major shift in the climate. The lifeblood of the civilization, the Gaga-Hakra river system, may have dried up, transforming fertile farmlands into dust. Some theories suggest invasions by outside groups, yet the archaeological record shows little evidence of widespread violence. It appears to be a slow fade, a quiet retreat from urban glory. The people did not vanish in a single cataclysm, but their civilization, their unique way of life, did. They melted back into the landscape, their cultural identity lost, their cities buried by silt and time. This raises a haunting question. How does a society so advanced, so successful, simply choose to walk away from everything it built? The silent, planned streets of Mohenjo-Daro hold that secret close. While the Indus Valley faded slowly into obscurity, another civilization met a far more dramatic and fiery end. The Minoans of Crete built a world of breathtaking beauty and sophistication, only to have it shattered in a single, earth-shattering day. From roughly 2700 to 1100 before the Common Era, their culture flourished on that sun-drenched Mediterranean island. They were not warriors building defensive walls, but artists and traders who constructed vast, labyrinthine palace complexes, the greatest of which was Knossos. These were not merely royal homes, but the vibrant hearts of their society, with storerooms for olive oil and wine, workshops for skilled craftspeople, and open courtyards for public ceremonies. Their art is instantly recognizable, bursting with life. Vibrant frescoes show lithe athletes leaping over the backs of powerful bulls, a ritual that may have given rise to the later Greek myth of the Minotaur in his labyrinth. Other paintings depict graceful dolphins and octopuses, reflecting a deep connection to the sea that made them a major maritime power. This was a society that seemed to celebrate peace, prosperity, and the natural world. Then, around 1600 before the Common Era, the world exploded. The volcano on the island of Thera, modern Santorini, erupted with a force unimaginable. This was not a simple volcanic event. It was one of the largest eruptions in human history. The cataclysm would have been seen and heard for hundreds of miles. A colossal column of ash and rock blasted into the sky, plunging the region into darkness. Then came the tsunamis. Waves, perhaps as high as a 10-story building, radiated out from the eruption's epicenter, crashing onto the northern coasts of Crete with devastating power. The waves would have obliterated the Minoan fleet, their primary source of wealth and security, and scoured coastal towns and palaces from the map. Following the waves was a blanket of volcanic ash, a thick, suffocating layer that smothered farmland, poisoned the soil, and made agriculture impossible for years. The immediate devastation was absolute, but the eruption alone does not fully explain the Minoans' ultimate disappearance. It was a knockout blow from which they could not recover. Their infrastructure was shattered, their economy ruined. In this critically weakened state, they became vulnerable. Within a few generations, the Mycenaeans from the Greek mainland, a more warlike culture, moved in. They took over the damaged palace sites and imposed their own language and system of governance. The Minoans' own script, a mysterious written language we call Linear A, was abandoned and forgotten, replaced by the Mycenaean Linear B, which we can now read. This linguistic shift is the final, silent testament to their cultural extinction. The Minoans were not just conquered, they were assimilated. Their unique identity, their art, their beliefs, and their voice were swallowed first by natural fury, and then by a new dominant culture. The vibrant bull leapers and serene sea creatures painted on their walls are all that remain, a beautiful ghost of a world that vanished in fire and water. From the sunken palaces of the Mediterranean, our search leads us to a vast and desolate landscape where an empire rose from the desert itself. Far to the east of the Minoan world, where the deserts of Central Asia meet the snow-capped mountains, a different kind of mystery was unfolding. The Oxus Civilization emerged as a brilliant but fleeting star in the Bronze Age. For 600 years, from around 2300 to 1700 before the Common Era, this culture, also known to scholars as the Bactria-Margiana archaeological complex, built a network of powerful city-states across what is now Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Afghanistan. These were not open, sprawling cities like those of the Indus Valley. They were formidable fortresses with high, thick walls and imposing gateways designed to protect the wealth and secrets within. Inside these citadels, artisans mastered fire and metal, creating breathtaking works of art from bronze, silver, and gold. Their distinctive style blended artistic ideas from distant lands, showing clear influences from both Mesopotamia to their west and the Indus Valley to their east. They produced intricate compartmented seals, tiny works of art used for stamping documents or goods, and stunning female figurines like the famous Bactrian princess, adorned with elaborate headdresses and symbols of power. These artifacts speak of a society with a complex spiritual life and a highly structured social order. Yet, for all their connections and craftsmanship, they left behind no deciphered written records. Their story is told only through the objects they buried and the walls they built. Then, with startling speed, their world collapsed. The great fortresses were abandoned. The sophisticated metalwork ceased. The people seemed to simply melt away, likely dispersing or being absorbed by the nomadic steppe cultures that moved through the region. So what happened to this formidable civilization? The most compelling theories point to a familiar enemy: environmental change. The life-giving Amu Darya River, known in antiquity as the Oxus, may have shifted its course or dwindled, turning the agricultural heartland into desert and severing the economic ties that bound them to their trading partners. As the trade routes that were their lifeblood faded, so too did their reason for existing in such concentrated, fortified splendor. Their grand citadels became empty shells, their cultural identity dissolving into the sands until archaeologists began to piece their world back together in the 20th century. The Oxus Civilization presents us with a profound lesson in fragility. A society can be wealthy, well-connected, and powerfully defended, yet still be utterly vulnerable to the slow, silent shifts of the earth and the economy. Their beautiful artifacts are now all that remain, silent witnesses to a kingdom that trade built and that a changing world ultimately erased. From the silent fortresses of Central Asia, we now cross the globe to a continent whose ancient history holds mysteries of its own. Across the Atlantic, in the lush tropical rainforests of Mexico, another foundational society was taking shape. The Olmecs emerged as the mother culture of Mesoamerica, a civilization so influential that its innovations became the bedrock for every major culture that followed, from the Maya to the Aztec. From roughly 1400 to 400 before the Common Era, they carved a society from the sweltering lowlands, leaving behind a legacy defined by staggering achievements and profound mysteries. Their most iconic creations are the colossal stone heads, 17 of which have been discovered, carved from single blocks of basalt. Some tower over 9 feet tall and weigh more than 20 tons. Their features are distinct and powerful, with full lips, broad noses, and stern expressions, each wearing a unique helmet-like headdress. Most archaeologists believe these are portraits of powerful Olmec rulers, immortalized in stone. But the questions they raise are immense. How did they transport these gargantuan stones from quarries dozens of miles away through treacherous swamps and rivers without the wheel or pack animals? The sheer effort speaks of a society with immense organizational power and a deeply entrenched ruling class. Beyond the heads, the Olmecs were brilliant innovators. They are credited with developing the first written language in the Americas, a script that remains largely undeciphered. They devised a sophisticated calendar system, and were the first to construct formal ball courts for a ritual game that would become a cornerstone of Mesoamerican religion for over 1,000 years. They were, in essence, the inventors of a cultural blueprint that would define an entire region for millennia. Yet, despite being the originators, their own story is lost. We do not know what they called themselves. The name Olmec comes from a much later Aztec word. Their major ceremonial centers, San Lorenzo and La Venta, were meticulously planned with massive earthen pyramids and plazas aligned to celestial events. Then, around 400 before the Common Era, these centers were systematically abandoned. The great stone heads were deliberately buried, sometimes in long, orderly rows as if being put to rest. The unique Olmec artistic style, with its jaguar-like deities and swirling motifs, faded from use. What caused this cultural dissolution? Theories point to environmental pressures. The rivers that were their transportation highways may have shifted course, disrupting trade and agriculture. Evidence also suggests volcanic activity in the region could have rendered farmland infertile. Unlike the Minoans, there is no evidence of a single catastrophic event. It seems to have been a slower unraveling, where the social and political glue that held the civilization together simply lost its grip. The people likely dispersed, their identity blending into the rising cultures they had once inspired. The buried heads are the ultimate symbol of this mystery. They are not ruins of a fallen city, but carefully interred monuments to a lost leadership, a people who chose to hide their greatest leaders before walking away from their own heartland. Their voice is silent, but their influence echoes through time. Let's now journey to another continent, where a powerful kingdom built its legacy in stone on the African savanna. Deep in the heart of what is now Nigeria, a society of profound artistry and innovation left behind a gallery of silent, staring faces. The Nok culture flourished for 2,000 years, from around 1500 before the Common Era to 500 of the Common Era, and they stand as one of sub-Saharan Africa's first known civilizations to create life-sized terracotta sculptures. The very existence of these intricate clay figures reveals a society of remarkable complexity. Creating art on this scale requires more than just individual talent. It demands a stable, organized community that can support specialized artisans, feeding and housing them while they devote their time to mastering their craft. The sculptures themselves are breathtakingly detailed, capturing human forms with elaborate, textured hairstyles, bold facial features, and intricate jewelry. Each figure seems to be a portrait of a real person, offering us a fleeting, tangible connection to individuals who lived millennia ago. We can see the style of their beads and the care put into their braids, yet we have no idea what their names were, what language they spoke, or what gods they worshipped. These terracotta people hold all their secrets tightly. The mystery of the Nok deepens with their technological genius. They are among the very first people in all of Africa known to have smelted iron, a revolutionary skill that would have given them superior tools and weapons. This places them at the forefront of a technological shift that would reshape the continent. Yet, despite this advanced knowledge and their sophisticated art, their entire civilization vanished so completely that we do not even know what they called themselves. The name Nok is simply a modern label, taken from the village where their artifacts were first unearthed in the 20th century. Then, around 500 of the Common Era, the terracotta tradition stopped abruptly. The creation of these magnificent sculptures ceased entirely. Archaeological evidence points to a sudden shift in their way of life, with settlements being abandoned. What could have caused such a vibrant and technologically advanced culture to disappear? Theories suggest a slow-moving crisis, perhaps a dramatic shift in the climate that led to prolonged drought, making farming unsustainable. Another possibility is that their own success may have contributed to their downfall, with overgrazing by livestock or deforestation exhausting the land that supported them. It is also possible that the very technology they mastered, ironworking, spread to neighboring groups, transforming the social and political landscape and leading to their assimilation or displacement. The Nok did not necessarily die out, but their unique cultural identity, so vividly expressed in their art, was fractured and lost. Their legacy is a powerful but silent one, reminding us that even the most skilled and innovative societies are not immune to the pressures of a changing world. From the gallery of silent terracotta faces in Africa, our search for vanished cultures takes us to the remote highlands of South America. High in the thin air of the Peruvian Andes, a different kind of mother culture was weaving a spiritual web across the ancient world. The Chavín culture, centered at the monumental site of Chavín de Huanta, thrived for 700 years, from roughly 900 to 200 before the Common Era. This was not an empire built on military conquest, but a phenomenon of faith. Chavín de Huanta was the spiritual heart of the Andes, a destination for pilgrims who traveled from vast distances to experience its power. The site itself is an architectural marvel, a sprawling temple complex built with precisely cut stone and designed with incredible ingenuity. Its most famous feature is not a towering pyramid, but a labyrinth of dark, narrow interior passageways and chambers. Deep within this stone maze lies the Lanzon, a 15-foot-tall shaft of carved white granite that plunges from the ceiling into the floor. This is not a passive statue, but an active deity, its mouth snarling in a jaguar-like grimace, its hands ending in sharp claws. To approach it in the flickering torchlight of a narrow gallery would have been a terrifying, transformative experience, a direct encounter with a powerful god. The entire complex was a sensory engine designed to overwhelm and convert. Archaeologists have discovered sophisticated hydraulic systems that channeled water through the tunnels to create a roaring sound, like the roar of a jaguar, echoing through the stone halls. The iconography found throughout the site is a complex blend of human and animal features, with jaguars, harpy eagles, and caimans dominating the art. This was a religion of transformation, where shamans or priests may have used hallucinogenic drugs to journey into the spirit world and commune with these powerful animal forces. The influence of this belief system spread not by the sword but through trade and pilgrimage. The distinct Chavín artistic style, with its swirling forms and composite creatures, appears on pottery and textiles found hundreds of miles away. It became a prestigious, unifying visual language across the Andes, a shared set of symbols that connected diverse peoples under a common spiritual umbrella. So what caused this powerful religious center to lose its grip? The decline was slow and cultural, not sudden and violent. There is no evidence of a sacked city or invading army. Instead, scholars believe the authority of the Chavín priesthood was gradually undermined by forces they could not control. A series of prolonged droughts or perhaps devastating earthquakes may have struck the region. When the priests, who were seen as intermediaries to the gods, failed to bring rain or stop the shaking earth, their power and credibility evaporated. The pilgrimage routes to Chavín de Huanta fell silent. The production of its distinctive art ceased. The great ceremonial center was abandoned, not destroyed, and the cultural sphere it had unified fragmented into the many independent regional cultures that would follow. The Lanzon remains in its dark chamber, a silent, snarling god whose name and full meaning are lost forever, a testament to a spiritual empire that vanished when its people simply stopped believing. From the silent, high-altitude temples of the Andes, our search for the vanished now leads us across the world's greatest ocean to a remote island chain, and its own mysterious stone legacy. The vast, empty expanse of the Pacific Ocean seems an unlikely cradle for civilization, yet it was here that the Lapita people performed one of humanity's most daring acts of exploration. From roughly 1600 to 500 years before the Common Era, these master mariners launched their outrigger canoes into the unknown, becoming the first humans to colonize the remote islands of the Pacific. Their journey was a deliberate, generations-long expansion from the islands near New Guinea all the way to Tonga and Samoa, a triangle of ocean spanning thousands of miles. They did not simply drift with the currents, they navigated with purpose, reading the stars, the swell of the waves, and the flight patterns of birds to find specks of land over the horizon. Each new island they settled was a testament to their incredible bravery and skill, a victory over the planet's greatest wilderness, and at every new landing site, they left behind a single, consistent calling card, their distinctive pottery. These were not plain, utilitarian vessels. They were works of art decorated with intricate geometric patterns stamped into the clay with delicate toothed tools. The designs are a complex language of dots, lines, and faces, a shared artistic signature that connected communities across a vast seascape. This pottery is the archaeological trail of breadcrumbs that allows us to trace their epic migration. Yet this very trail grows cold. Around 500 years before the Common Era, the making of Lapita pottery stops entirely. The tradition vanishes from the archaeological record as if a switch was flipped. The people themselves did not vanish, but their unique cultural identity underwent a profound transformation. Their specific language is lost to us, absorbed into the ancestral tongues that would later evolve into the Polynesian languages we know today. Their social structures and beliefs were reshaped by life on scattered islands. The reasons for this cultural dissolution are as complex as the ocean they mastered. As they settled each new island ecosystem, they had to adapt their technologies and ways of life, a process that inevitably led to cultural change. They also likely encountered small, existing populations in Western islands, and intermarriage would have blended traditions. Over centuries, the need for that unifying Lapita pottery style may have faded as new, localized island identities emerged and solidified. They stopped being Lapita and became the direct ancestors of the Polynesian peoples. So the Lapita did not so much disappear as they evolved, their specific culture dissolving into the very success of their own descendants. Their legacy is not a ruined city, but the peopling of an ocean. They are the ghost in the genealogy of Polynesia, their incredible journey recorded only in scattered pottery shards and the very existence of the people who call those remote islands home. They sailed into history without a written log, leaving us to wonder about the brave families who first gazed upon the shores of Fiji and Samoa. From the vast island-scattered Pacific, we now turn to a very different mystery, one rooted in the dry canyons of the American Southwest. The silent, multi-story cities of the Ancestral Puebloans cling to the sheer canyon walls of the American Southwest, a testament to human ingenuity in one of the continent's most challenging landscapes. For over 1,000 years, from roughly 100 to 1,600 of the Common Era, these people, once known as the Anasazi, built a remarkable civilization in the Four Corners region. Their legacy is not one of grand palaces, but of intimate communities engineered into the very rock itself. At places like Mesa Verde in Colorado and the great houses of Choco Canyon in New Mexico, they constructed sprawling, multi-story apartment complexes with hundreds of rooms, accessible only by climbing down from the mesa top or scaling the cliff face. These were not simple shelters, but sophisticated structures built with precise stone masonry, featuring circular kivas or ceremonial rooms sunk into the earth. Their entire society was a masterclass in adaptation, cultivating maize, beans, and squash in the arid soil, and developing complex water catchment systems to survive. Then, in the 13th century, something shifted. The cliff dwellings, which had thrived for generations, were systematically vacated. The people gathered their belongings and walked away from their ancestral homes, migrating south and east to establish new pueblos. This was not a sudden panic, but a coordinated, deliberate exodus. So what compelled an entire civilization to abandon the architectural marvels they had worked centuries to perfect? The answer is likely a cascade of interconnected crises. Tree ring data reveals a prolonged and severe drought known as the Great Drought, which gripped the region for decades. This would have devastated their already precarious agriculture, turning life into a relentless struggle for water. At the same time, evidence suggests they had deforested the mesas around their great houses, using the timber for construction and fuel, which would have led to soil erosion and further degraded their ability to farm. This environmental pressure may have ignited social unrest. Did conflict over scarce resources fracture their communal society? Did their spiritual leaders, who guided them from the kivas, lose their authority when the rains failed to come? The silent ruins offer no clear verdict. The migration was a survival strategy, a choice to find a new beginning rather than perish in a place that could no longer support them. Their descendants are the modern Pueblo peoples who carry forward many cultural traditions, yet the specific stories, the names, and the final days of those who lived in the cliff cities remain a profound mystery. The empty stone rooms tucked securely into their alcoves are a powerful monument not to a failure, but to a difficult, collective decision to move on. Our journey now leads us from these settled canyon communities to the vast, open steppes of Eurasia, where a nomadic empire left behind a different kind of mystery. The silent canyons of the American Southwest give way to the endless, wind-swept grasslands of the Eurasian steppe. Here, a different kind of power rose, one built not on stone cities but on the backs of horses. The Xiongnu Confederacy was a nomadic empire that dominated the eastern steppes for centuries, a force so formidable that it compelled the Han Dynasty of China to construct the first Great Walls. From the 3rd century before the Common Era to the late 1st century of the Common Era, they were the masters of the open plain, a shadow empire that lived and died by its mobility. Chinese chroniclers, who were their primary adversaries, described them as fierce warriors, born in the saddle and capable of firing arrows with deadly accuracy from a galloping horse. They were the perpetual storm on the northern frontier, a constant threat that shaped Chinese foreign policy and military strategy for generations. Yet, for all their historical impact, the Xiongnu left no written records of their own. We hear about them only through the voices of their enemies, a one-sided story that paints them as barbarians without ever revealing their own perspective. Who were these people really? What songs did they sing around their campfires, and what laws governed their vast, mobile confederation? The answers are buried with them. Our only direct connection to the Xiongnu comes from their burial mounds known as kurgans. These grassy tombs, scattered across Mongolia and southern Siberia, have yielded spectacular treasures, intricate gold plaques depicting battling animals, finely crafted weapons, and beautifully preserved textiles. These artifacts speak of wealth, status, and a sophisticated artistic vision, but they are silent on the matters that define a civilization. They tell us nothing of their government, their daily social structures, or their spiritual beliefs. The Confederacy was a fragile alliance of different tribes, held together by the charisma and power of a single leader. When that leadership weakened, the entire structure began to crumble. Internal strife between rival factions made them vulnerable. The Han Dynasty, under ambitious emperors, launched relentless military campaigns that pushed them back. And behind it all, a changing climate may have disrupted the delicate balance of their pastoral economy, as shifting rainfall patterns affected the very grasslands that fed their vast herds of horses, sheep, and cattle. This combination of pressures proved fatal. The Xiongnu Confederacy fragmented. Some groups were absorbed into the Han Empire, while others may have begun a long, slow migration westward, their identity blurring and transforming until they possibly contributed to the Hunnic movements that would later shake Europe. But a continuous Xiongnu political or cultural identity did not survive. They became a classic example of a lost civilization, one known only through the fearful eyes of their settled neighbors, a powerful ghost on the historical stage. Their story is a stark reminder that history is often written by those who build with stone and ink, while those who build with tents and traditions can vanish into the very winds they rode. From the open steppes of Eurasia, we now plunge into the dense green heart of the Amazon, where a different kind of mystery was hidden for centuries. For centuries, the Amazon was seen as a green desert, a vast, untouched wilderness incapable of supporting large civilizations. That romantic notion has been utterly shattered. Recent archaeological discoveries, powered by laser scanning technology from the air, have peeled back the forest canopy to reveal the ghostly imprints of a lost world. LiDAR surveys have exposed a hidden landscape of geometric earthworks, extensive road networks, and fortified villages sprawling across the basin. These were not small, scattered tribes, but complex societies that flourished from around 1250 to 1500 of the Common Era, managing the rainforest on a grand scale. In the Brazilian state of Acre, huge geometric ditches known as geoglyphs form precise circles and squares, their purpose still debated but clearly marking a highly organized society. In the Bolivian Llanos de Mojos, vast raised fields and enormous man-made mounds dot the savanna, the remnants of an agricultural system that fed thousands. These people were not passive inhabitants of the jungle. They were its master engineers. They solved the problem of the Amazon's notoriously poor soil by creating terra preta, or dark earth. This was not a natural resource but a human invention, a rich, fertile soil they manufactured by mixing charcoal, bone, and compost into the ground. This technique allowed them to sustain large, permanent populations in places we once thought were uninhabitable. They transformed the very earth beneath their feet to build a civilization. And then it was all gone. The arrival of Europeans in the 16th century did not just bring new people, it brought invisible annihilation. Diseases like smallpox and measles, to which the Amazonian peoples had no immunity, raced along the sophisticated road networks that had once been their strength. The demographic collapse was catastrophic, likely wiping out over 90% of the population within a few generations. The survivors were displaced, enslaved, or assimilated, their social structures shattered beyond recovery. The jungle wasted no time in reclaiming its own. Within a century or two, the carefully managed fields were overgrown, the earthworks faded into the landscape, and the memory of the people who built them was erased. We are left with the silent, overgrown patterns, but we have no idea what these cultures called themselves, what gods they worshipped, or what language they spoke. Their story is a profound tragedy, a vibrant chapter of human history that was not just closed but ripped from the book entirely. These findings force us to rewrite history, revealing the Amazon not as a pristine wilderness, but as a garden built and then abandoned by its creators. The scent of incense once guided caravan routes across a different desert, where another forgotten kingdom grew wealthy from the world's desires. The scent of frankincense once guided caravan routes across the deserts of southern Arabia, a perfume that built a kingdom of legend. The Sabaeans, known to us as the people of Sheba, carved their civilization from this harsh landscape. thriving for over 1,000 years on a single, precious commodity. Their wealth was not mined from the earth, but tapped from the gnarled trunks of frankincense and myrrh trees, resins so coveted in the ancient world that they were worth their weight in gold. This monopoly on the aromatics trade, desired for religious rituals and medicine from Rome to India, financed a society of immense sophistication. At its heart was the Great Marib Dam, a colossal feat of engineering that tamed the unpredictable desert rains. This massive stone structure captured seasonal floodwaters, turning the arid plains around their capital into a lush, green paradise capable of supporting a dense population. The dam was the literal foundation of their power, a symbol of their mastery over an unforgiving environment. The Queen of Sheba's legendary visit to King Solomon, a story immortalized in both the Bible and the Quran, epitomizes the Sabaeans' far-reaching fame and influence. Yet, for all their renown, the historical reality of their society remains frustratingly elusive. We have their inscriptions carved in a script we can partially read, which list the names of their kings and gods. But these are official records, stone bulletins that speak of victories and dedications, not the daily lives, the poems, or the personal stories of the Sabaean people. How did it feel to be a merchant in that bustling capital, surrounded by the rich scent of incense and the wealth of empires? The inscriptions do not say. Their decline was a slow unraveling of their core strengths. The Roman Empire's conversion to Christianity in the 4th century lessened the demand for pagan incense. New maritime trade routes bypassed their overland caravans, severing their economic lifeline. Then came the final, devastating blows. The Great Marib Dam, the source of their agricultural life, suffered catastrophic failures. While it had been repaired many times before, a combination of neglect, perhaps due to lost revenue, and a final, massive breach around the 6th century, sent a destructive flood across the farmland. The intricate irrigation channels that had nourished their fields for a millennium were buried under silt and sand. Without water and without trade, the great cities of Saba were abandoned to the desert winds. The Sabaean people did not vanish in a day, but their distinct political and cultural identity was gradually absorbed by the rising Himyarite kingdom and later by the sweeping currents of Islamic culture. Their language faded, their gods were forgotten, and their story was reduced to a single, glittering legend of a queen and her spices. The ruins of Marib stand today not as a monument to a sudden catastrophe, but to a civilization that slowly faded when the world no longer had a need for its perfume. From the fragrant deserts of Arabia, our search takes a dramatic turn to the misty highlands of Laos, where a different kind of mystery lies scattered across the landscape in the form of thousands of giant stone jars. Scattered across the high plateaus of Laos, thousands of immense stone jars stand in silent congregations, their purpose lost to the centuries. These massive vessels, some taller than a person and weighing many tons, are hewn from solid rock and arranged in mysterious clusters across the landscape. They date from the Iron Age, roughly 500 years before the Common Era to 500 of the Common Era, yet the civilization that carved them remains nameless. Local legend speaks of a race of giants who used the jars to brew rice beer for a great celebration. Another tale tells of an ancient king who commanded their creation to store wine after a mighty military victory. These stories add a layer of myth, but the archaeological truth is likely more somber. The leading theory suggests these were vessels for the dead, used for either excarnation, where bodies were exposed to the elements, or for storing the cremated remains of the deceased. A few jars have been found with human bone fragments and burial goods inside, lending weight to this funerary hypothesis. This was a society with the resources, skill, and communal will to undertake a staggering logistical task. They had to identify suitable stone quarries, extract these colossal cylinders, transport them for miles, and position them with intention. This speaks of a highly organized culture with social hierarchy and skilled artisans. Why did this practice end? Why was this entire cultural tradition abandoned? We have no answers. The region's turbulent modern history, scarred by the Vietnam War and littered with unexploded ordnance, has placed a tragic lock on this ancient mystery, making large-scale archaeological excavation dangerous and rare. The jars themselves are the only testament to their makers, a phantom people who invested immense effort into a ritual we can only guess at, leaving behind a landscape of silent stone questions. From these enigmatic highlands, our search moves to a different mountain range, where another society forged a glittering legacy just before the Maya rose to prominence. While the Lapita were navigating the Pacific, another monumental city was taking shape high atop a mountain in the heart of Mesoamerica. The Zapotecs did not just build a city, they engineered an entire mountaintop, leveling its crown to create the grand plazas and towering pyramids of Monte Alban. From around 500 years before the Common Era, this became the ceremonial and political heart of the Oaxaca Valley for over 1,000 years, a testament to a civilization of immense sophistication. The Zapotecs were pioneers, developing one of the earliest forms of writing in the Americas, a hieroglyphic script that recorded the deeds of rulers and the complex cycles of their calendar. Their tombs, buried deep within the platform mounds, were filled with exquisite pottery and intricate jade jewelry, showing a society deeply concerned with ancestry and the afterlife. Yet one of their most haunting monuments is the Gallery of the Danzantes, a collection of stone slabs carved with figures in twisted, contorted poses. For a long time, scholars thought they depicted dancers, hence the name. But the current belief is far darker. These are likely representations of tortured war captives or slain elites, a stark, permanent record of the power and occasional brutality of Monte Alban's early rulers. This was a civilization firmly in control of its world. So why did this great city, after more than a millennium of dominance, begin to fade? Around 750 years into the Common Era, the power of Monte Alban started to wane. The grand constructions ceased and the population gradually drifted away from the sacred mountain. This was not a sudden collapse, but a slow cultural migration. The reasons are shrouded, but they point to a combination of internal and external pressures. Centuries of intensive agriculture on the surrounding hillsides may have led to soil exhaustion and erosion, making it harder to feed the urban population. There is also evidence of increased social unrest, perhaps rebellions from subjugated villages within their own territory, chipping away at the central authority. As Monte Alban's grip loosened, a new power center rose just a day's walk away. Mitla, with its stunning geometric stone mosaics, became the new religious hub. This shift was profound. It was not an invasion, but a transformation. The focus of Zapotec culture moved from the political and military might of Monte Alban to the spiritual and artistic center of Mitla. The old state dissolved, and with it, the specific context for understanding the early hieroglyphs and the full history recorded on its walls was lost. The final blow to our modern understanding came centuries later with the Spanish conquest. The vast majority of Zapotec bark paper books or codices were systematically burned by zealous priests, destroying a library of their classical knowledge. This act created an irreparable gap. We can see the words they wrote, but we cannot fully read their story. The Zapotec people themselves never vanished. Their descendants and languages thrive in Oaxaca today. But the classic civilization of Monte Alban, with its specific political structure and the complete meaning of its legacy, did fade into history, leaving it silent, carved danzantes to guard secrets they will no longer share. From this Mesoamerican mountain city, we cross the globe to the Indian subcontinent, where a culture known only from its artifacts presents a different kind of puzzle. Elegant gray pottery painted with dark, intricate patterns marks the presence of another ghost in the historical record. Across the fertile plains of northern India, the painted gray Ware culture flourished for 6 centuries, its beautiful ceramics scattered like anonymous seeds. This civilization is a profound challenge for archaeologists, defined almost entirely by its artifacts. The pottery itself is a marvel of craftsmanship, wheel thrown and fired to a smooth, silvery gray finish, then decorated with precise black lines, geometric shapes, and occasional stylized figures. These were not crude utilitarian pots, but objects of refined daily use, suggesting a society with established artistic traditions and a keen sense of aesthetics. Yet these very objects highlight the silence that surrounds their makers. We have their plates and bowls, but we have no idea what songs they sang over them. We have their tools, including early iron implements, but we know nothing of the blacksmiths who forged them or the rulers they may have served. This culture lives in a tantalizing space between archaeology and legend. Some scholars connect these people to the early Indo-Aryan settlers described in the great Indian epics, the very societies chronicled in the Mahabharata. Could these be the leftover dishes from the era of legendary kings and epic battles? The link is seductive but ultimately unproven. The texts are poetic and religious, not historical records, and they were written down centuries later. They provide a backdrop, but they cannot tell us the specific story of the people who actually held these gray pots in their hands. What were their family structures? What gods did they pray to for rain or for victory? The elegant pottery offers no answers. Its disappearance was as quiet as its existence. The painted gray Ware style was gradually replaced by a new ceramic tradition, the northern black polished Ware, which heralded the rise of the first major states in the region. The people of the gray Ware were likely absorbed into these new, more complex political entities, their unique cultural identity blending and dissolving into the emerging mainstream. They did not vanish in a catastrophe, but simply faded into the next chapter of history, leaving behind their beautiful, silent table Ware as the only testament to their distinct way of life. They are a reminder that a civilization can be widespread and sophisticated, yet remain almost entirely anonymous, its story buried not under sand, but under the weight of time and the success of its own descendants. From these shadowy plains of ancient India, our search for the vanished takes us back to the Andes, where a different culture left its mark not on pottery, but on the very skin of the earth. While the Zapotecs reshaped a mountain and the painted gray Ware culture left its elegant pottery, another society was carving its legacy on an even grander scale, but one meant to be seen from the heavens. In the stark, dry plains of southern Peru, the Nazca culture turned the desert itself into their canvas. For 1,000 years, from 500 years before the Common Era to 500 of the Common Era, they did not just survive in this harsh environment, they thrived, creating a civilization famous for its mystery. Their most breathtaking achievement is not a city of stone, but a gallery of giant drawings etched into the desert floor. These are the Nazca lines, enormous geoglyphs depicting sprawling spiders, hummingbirds with impossibly long beaks, a monstrous killer whale, and perfect geometric shapes stretching for miles. The precision is staggering. How did they create such massive, perfectly proportioned figures without being able to fly up to check their work? They likely used simple surveying techniques, scaling up small models with ropes and stakes, a testament to their mathematical skill and communal coordination. But the ultimate question remains, why? Why would a people invest so much effort into art they could never see in its entirety? the theories are as fascinating as the lines themselves. Some researchers propose they were a giant astronomical calendar, aligning with celestial events to mark the seasons for planting. The most compelling theory, however, connects them directly to the Nazca's most pressing need, water. In a desert where rain might only fall for a few hours each year, the lines may have been ritual pathways walked by priests during ceremonies to plead with water deities. The animal forms themselves could be symbols of fertility and rain, their giant shapes serving as permanent prayers etched into the earth, meant to be seen by the gods in the sky. This was a civilization deeply connected to the spiritual world, a connection seen in other, more unsettling practices. The Nazca also collected trophy heads, likely from revered ancestors or vanquished enemies, believing they held life force and power. Their ceremonial capital, Cahokia, was not a densely populated city, but a pilgrimage site of temples and plazas where people gathered for these vital rituals. For centuries, this system worked. They built sophisticated underground aqueducts called puquios to tap into underground water, sustaining their agriculture and their society. Then their carefully balanced world shattered. The very climatic forces they prayed to control turned against them. Evidence points to a devastating cycle of weather catastrophes, likely driven by intense El Niño events. First came catastrophic floods, torrential rains that would have scoured the desert, washing away farms and settlements. These were followed by the true killer, a prolonged and severe drought that may have lasted for decades. The puquios ran dry, the land cracked and died. The rituals at Cahokia lost their power when the gods seemed to stop listening. The ceremonial center was abandoned, and the people who had managed the desert for a millennium were forced to disperse. We know they were skilled potters and weavers, but their language is utterly lost to us, likely an ancestor to Quechua or Aymara that was never written down. The meaning of the spider, the monkey, the endless trapezoids died with the last Nazca priest. The lines remain, a breathtaking and silent testament to a people who spoke to the gods in a language of shapes on the earth until the sky itself stopped answering. From this vast, open-air desert temple, our journey into the vanished leads us to the fertile, river-fed heart of North America. Across the Mississippi River from modern St. Louis, the great city of Cahokia once pulsed with a life we can barely conceive. Between 1050 and 1350 of the Common Era, this was the largest city in North America, a bustling metropolis of up to 20,000 people. Its skyline was not of steel and glass, but of earth and grass, dominated by the colossal Monk's Mound. This enormous earthen pyramid, with its base covering 14 acres and rising 100 feet high, still stands as the largest prehistoric earthwork in the Americas. The Grand Plaza at its foot could have held thousands for ceremonies, markets, or political gatherings. This was the heart of a complex, stratified society, a chiefdom that commanded a vast trade network stretching from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. Shells from the coast, copper from the north, and mica from the Appalachians all flowed into this thriving hub. Yet, for all its grandeur, Cahokia's story is one we must read entirely from the ground, for its people left no written records we can understand. They are known to us only by the silent monuments they built and the objects they buried. Then, around the 14th century, the heart of this civilization stopped beating. The great city was gradually abandoned. The flow of trade goods slowed to a trickle, and the plazas fell silent. The people did not vanish from the earth, but they walked away from their urban masterpiece, dispersing into smaller communities. So what could cause a society to leave behind such a monumental investment? The answer seems to be a cascade of interconnected failures. Centuries of intensive logging to build their palisades and houses had deforested the surrounding landscape, leading to soil erosion and flash floods. Then climate change delivered a devastating blow. The onset of the Little Ice Age brought cooler, drier conditions that shortened the growing season and made their reliance on maize agriculture dangerously precarious. Imagine the desperation as harvests failed year after year, as the central authority of the chiefs proved powerless against the changing skies. This likely sparked social unrest and political collapse, a loss of faith in the leadership that had built the Great Mound. The people made a rational, if heartbreaking, choice to disperse, to find new lands where they could survive. Their descendants are among modern Native American tribes like the Osage and Quapaw, who carry forward elements of this ancient legacy, yet the specific cultural and political identity of the Cahokia chiefdom was irretrievably lost. The city was a ghost town, its mounds shrouded in trees, long before European explorers ever laid eyes on the Mississippi. Those silent, grass-covered mounds today are a powerful monument to a sophisticated indigenous civilization that achieved greatness and then made the conscious decision to walk away from it, leaving its full story buried under the soil. Our search now carries us across the Atlantic to the African continent, where a kingdom of legendary wealth is known to us almost entirely through the accounts of its rivals. South of Egypt, a kingdom of pyramids rose to challenge the very empires that once ruled it. The Kingdom of Kush, with its capital at Meroe, was no mere imitation of its northern neighbor. For over 600 years, from roughly 300 years before the Common Era to 350 of the Common Era, these rulers forged a distinct and powerful African civilization. Their ambition was staggering. They once conquered Egypt itself, ruling as its famed 25th dynasty, the Black Pharaohs. Yet their greatest legacy is a locked door, a written language we cannot fully open. The Meroitic script, an elegant and fluid writing system, was developed to record their laws, their history, and their literature. We can sound out the words, but their meaning remains a frustrating secret, leaving the Kushites as the authors of their own silent chronicle. What epic poems or royal decrees are hidden in those carved inscriptions, we may never know. The kingdom itself was an industrial powerhouse, a smelting center where countless furnaces lit the night sky, producing iron on a massive scale. This technological edge fueled their wealth and military might, allowing them to maintain trade networks that stretched all the way to Rome and India. Their wealth flowed down the Nile, but eventually that flow began to slow. The deserts encroached, squeezing their agricultural land and straining their resources. At the same time, their economic advantage was crumbling. New trade routes bypassed the Nile, redirecting the wealth of the ancient world away from their doorstep. Then came the raids from the rising Aksumite kingdom to the east, a final pressure that the weakened state could not withstand. The great city of Meroe was abandoned, its political identity dissolving. While their Nubian descendants would later build Christian kingdoms, the unique Meroitic language and the worship of their powerful lion god, Apidamak, faded from memory. Their own pyramids, smaller and steeper than those in Egypt, stand in silent clusters in the desert. They are magnificent, but unlike the hieroglyph-covered tombs in Egypt, they do not speak to us. The Kingdom of Kush represents a profound loss, a sophisticated culture that interacted with giants, only to have its own voice silenced by a script we can see but cannot read. From the silent pyramids of the Sudanese desert, our search moves to the blue waters of the Mediterranean, where a seafaring people left behind only whispers of their presence. Their names echo from temple walls as the architects of an age's end. The sea people swept across the late Bronze Age Mediterranean like a storm, a confederation of raiders immortalized only in the victory inscriptions of their most powerful enemy, Egypt. Around 1200 years before the Common Era, Their sudden appearance coincided with the fiery collapse of mighty empires, from the Hittites in Anatolia to the vibrant trading city of Ugarit. Egyptian records under Pharaoh Ramesses III depict a desperate, epic battle at the Nile Delta, repelling an invasion of these seaborne warriors and their families. The reliefs at Medinet Habu show them in distinctive horned helmets and feathered headdresses, their ships clashing with Egyptian vessels in a fight for survival. We know the names their enemies gave them: the Peliset, the Shekelesh, the Denyon, labels that hint at homelands from the Aegean to Sicily and Sardinia. Yet this is where the certainty ends. Who were these people really? What drove them from their homes to become the terror of the known world? The silence is deafening. They left behind no cities we can identify as theirs, no written records in their own voice, no pottery style that clearly marks their homeland. They are ghosts defined entirely by the destruction they caused and the fear they instilled in settled kingdoms. Were they displaced populations fleeing their own environmental disasters? Were they opportunistic pirates exploiting a world already weakening from trade disruptions and climate change? We simply do not know. After their recorded raids, these groups did not vanish from the earth. The Peliset, for instance, are widely believed to be the Philistines who settled on the coast of Canaan. But in settling, they underwent a profound transformation. Their original language, their gods, their unique customs, all of it was absorbed and assimilated into the cultures of the lands they occupied. Any distinct identity they carried from their mysterious homeland was erased within a few generations. The Sea Peoples thus represent the ultimate paradox, a civilization known only for its role in ending other civilizations. Their own story is the greatest casualty of the chaos they helped unleash, lost forever in the smoke of burning cities and the salt spray of the sea they once ruled. From these enigmatic raiders of the Mediterranean, we turn to a very different mystery, one of stone and sovereignty in southern Africa. The stone walls of Great Zimbabwe curve and climb against the African sky, an architectural marvel built without a single drop of mortar. Between the 11th and 15th centuries, this was the heart of a powerful kingdom, a city of stone constructed by the Shona people. Its very name comes from the Shona phrase for houses of stone, and its scale is breathtaking. The great enclosure, with its towering 30-foot-high wall, contains a mysterious conical tower and narrow, winding passageways, their purpose still debated by scholars. This was no isolated fortress, but the capital of a vast trading empire. From this inland hub, gold and ivory flowed out to the Swahili coast on the Indian Ocean, connecting the African interior to a global network. In return, luxury goods from across the world flowed in, evidenced by the Chinese celadon pottery and Arab coins unearthed by archaeologists. The wealth generated by this trade financed the city and the powerful monarchy that ruled from the hill complex, overlooking the stone structures below. Yet by the middle of the 15th century, this thriving metropolis was abandoned. The stone rooms and great enclosures were left to the elements. The people did not vanish. The Shona culture continued and evolved in new kingdoms, but the specific political entity centered on Great Zimbabwe dissolved. Why would a civilization leave behind such an immaculate stone city? The answers are not recorded in any written chronicle. The most likely explanation is a slow-moving crisis. Centuries of supporting a large population and their cattle may have led to overgrazing and soil exhaustion, degrading the agricultural land that fed the city. Political fragmentation could have split the kingdom, and a crucial shift in trade routes may have redirected the flow of gold and wealth away from the city, starving it of its economic lifeblood. For a long time, European colonists refused to believe the truth of its origins. inventing fanciful tales of Phoenicians or the Queen of Sheba. They could not reconcile the sophisticated stonework with their own prejudices about African capabilities. Modern archaeology has definitively proven Great Zimbabwe was an indigenous African achievement, a masterpiece of engineering and statecraft. Yet, the victory of confirming its origin does not unlock its secrets. The silent, dry stone walls do not speak of the names of its kings, the details of its laws, or the prayers spoken within its enclosures. We are left with the magnificent, empty shell of a civilization that mastered trade and architecture, but left its story for the wind to tell. The mystery of a lost language also defines our next civilization, one that emerged centuries later in the very region where the Indus Valley script was first found. Chipped stone tools scattered across the foothills of the Himalayas whisper of a human presence older than memory itself. The Soanian culture, emerging over 500,000 years ago, represents one of the very first chapters in the human story of South Asia. Their world was the Lower Paleolithic era, a time so distant that our own history seems like yesterday in comparison. All we have of them are their stone tools, carefully flaked pebbles and choppers found in the Siwalik Hills. These artifacts are not grand monuments, but they are a profound testament to human ingenuity, the very first technology. Each carefully struck stone represents a problem solved, a need met, whether for butchering game or processing plants. Yet these silent tools cannot speak of the people who held them. We have no way of knowing if these early hominins used language, how their families were structured, or what they believed about the world around them. They are an archaeological industry, a way of life defined by a specific technology, not a civilization with cities and kings. Their disappearance is as quiet as their existence. They did not fall in a war or flee a drought. Their unique tool-making tradition was simply superseded, slowly replaced by more advanced lithic technologies as new human groups migrated through the region over millennia. The Soanians did not vanish, they evolved, their bloodline and knowledge likely blending into the great river of humanity. Their story highlights a profound truth. The phenomenon of lost cultures stretches back into the deep shadows of prehistory. Entire ways of life, entire populations, can dissolve into the landscape, leaving behind only the barest evidence of their passage, a few chipped stones to mark their immense journey through time. This deep time perspective makes the rise and fall of more recent civilizations feel both monumental and fleeting. From this unimaginably ancient past, we leap across millennia to a medieval kingdom whose abrupt end is etched in stone. A unique script, painstakingly carved onto parchment, was once the voice of a kingdom now almost erased from history. The Kingdom of Caucasian Albania flourished in the rugged landscapes of the Eastern Caucasus, a world away from its modern namesake. For 1,000 years, from the 2nd century before the Common Era to the 8th century of the Common Era, this civilization forged a distinct identity, developing its own written alphabet and embracing Christianity in a region squeezed between powerful empires. Theirs was a culture of resilience, maintaining its faith and language against the persistent pressure of the Zoroastrian Sasanians to the south, and later, the advancing Arab armies from the east. They were not a people without a voice, but one whose voice was systematically silenced. The key to their story lay hidden for over a millennium in a few precious palimpsests, manuscripts where their original texts were scraped away to make room for new writings. The Caucasian Albanian script was only deciphered in the last 2 decades, a modern breakthrough that finally allowed these scraped-away words to whisper again. Yet this victory is bittersweet, for the vast majority of their literature, their histories, and their laws are gone forever, overwritten or destroyed. The kingdom's decline was a story of relentless pressure. repeated invasions by Arab forces culminated in their absorption into the Islamic caliphates. This political conquest was followed by a profound cultural and religious transformation, as the gradual Islamization of the region led to the abandonment of their churches and the active suppression of their written tradition. Their unique identity did not vanish in a single battle, but was slowly and thoroughly merged with the dominant Armenian and Georgian cultures around them. Today, all that remains are fragments, like the stone foundations of the temple at Kish and the ghostly letters on those recently decoded palimpsests. They stand as a poignant reminder that a writing system alone cannot save a culture. If the political will to use it is broken and the records are destroyed, an entire civilization can be folded into the pages of history, its distinct story lost to the very act of being conquered. From this Caucasian kingdom absorbed by its neighbors, we travel to a world of absolute isolation, where a different culture developed for centuries, completely cut off from the rest of humanity. Isolation preserved the Guanche people for over 2,000 years on their volcanic islands. Cut off from the African mainland, these indigenous Berber descendants developed a society entirely their own, a living fossil of the ancient world. They practiced mummification, preserving their elite in a manner eerily similar to the Egyptians, though they had no knowledge of them. Their language, a branch of the Berber family, evolved in complete solitude, and they lived in caves and simple stone structures governed by a system of kings. Then, in the 15th century, Spanish ships appeared on the horizon. The end came with brutal speed. The Guanches, with their stone tools and isolated immune systems, were defenseless against European steel, diseases like smallpox, and the institution of slavery. Their population collapsed. Survivors were forcibly converted to Christianity and assimilated, their language systematically suppressed until the last speaker died. Today, the Guanche voice is utterly silent. We have no written records from their own perspective. Their language is extinct, and only a handful of words survive in place names. We know them through the accounts of their conquerors, their mummies, and the silent stone foundations of their dwellings. Their story is a heartbreakingly clear lesson. A culture can survive in a bubble for millennia, perfectly preserved by its isolation, only to be popped and erased in a single, violent moment of contact. This pattern of discovery and erasure would echo again, not on remote islands, but deep beneath the earth in the rocky heart of Turkey. The Hittites forged an empire of iron and law from the rugged heart of Anatolia. Around 1600 years before the Common Era, they rose to become a superpower, a kingdom of charioteers and diplomats whose influence stretched from the Aegean coast to the frontiers of Egypt. Their capital, Hattusa, was a marvel of defensive architecture, protected by immense stone walls and monumental gateways adorned with lions and sphinxes. Within those walls lay the true treasure of their civilization, not gold or jewels, but libraries. They meticulously recorded everything on thousands of clay tablets, pressed with the intricate wedge-shaped marks of cuneiform script. These archives preserved their laws, which were often more merciful than those of their contemporaries. Their detailed treaties, including the famous peace accord with Egypt after the Battle of Kadesh, and the very annals of their kings. They were a people who documented their own story with painstaking care. Then, around 1200 before the Common Era, their world came crashing down. The great city of Hattusa was not just conquered, it was systematically abandoned. The palaces and temples were emptied and left to the elements, the empire shattered into fragments. What could topple such a meticulously recorded power? The collapse was likely a perfect storm of disasters. They faced the same mysterious onslaught of the sea peoples that ravaged the Mediterranean. Internal rebellions may have fractured their unity, and a prolonged, devastating drought would have crippled their agriculture and economy. In the wake of this chaos, the Hittite political structure dissolved. Small Neo-Hittite states clung on in Syria for a few centuries, but they were gradually absorbed by the expanding Assyrian Empire. The knowledge of their cuneiform writing died out. Most critically, the Hittite language itself ceased to be spoken, vanishing from human memory for over 3,000 years. Their civilization was not just defeated, it was utterly forgotten, its entire history buried under the dust of Hattusa. It was only in the early 20th century that scholars finally cracked the code of their language, revealing it as the earliest attested member of the vast Indo-European family. The silent clay tablets suddenly had a voice again. The story of the Hittites delivers a sobering lesson. Even an empire with extensive written records, a people who carefully documented their own existence, can be completely erased from history if those records are lost and the cultural chain that carries their story forward is permanently broken. Their rediscovery stands as a triumph of modern archaeology, a ghost empire resurrected from baked clay. Our journey now carries us from the fortified capitals of Anatolia to the lush, volcanic islands of Southeast Asia. The power of Srivijaya was written not in stone but on water. For over 600 years, from the 7th to the 13th centuries, this maritime empire ruled the waves from its heart in Sumatra. Its capital, Palembang, was not a city of grand pyramids, but a bustling port city of wooden palaces and stilt houses built over the Musi River. This was a thalassocracy, a kingdom whose territory was the sea itself. Srivijaya's dominion was the Strait of Malacca, the narrow, strategic choke point through which all trade between China and India had to pass. By controlling this watery highway, the empire grew immensely wealthy, taxing the spices, silks, and precious goods that moved between the world's great economies. It became more than a trade hub. It was a renowned center of Mahayana Buddhist learning, attracting scholars and pilgrims from across Asia. Yet, for all its influence, Srivijaya is a ghost in the archaeological record. The tropical climate and the perishable nature of its wooden cities meant that almost everything has returned to the earth. We know its story not from its own grand chronicles, but from the travelogues of Chinese monks and the scattered inscriptions it left on stone along the coast. How does a maritime superpower simply fade from view? The empire's decline was a slow death by 1,000 cuts. In the 11th century, the powerful Chola dynasty of India launched devastating naval raids, challenging Srivijayan dominance and sacking its ports. These attacks shattered the aura of invincibility that had protected its trade network. At the same time, the empire faced an even more insidious enemy, the slow, silent silting of the Musi River. The very waterways that made Palembang a perfect port gradually filled with mud, pushing the coastline farther away and stranding the city's economic lifeblood. As Srivijaya weakened, new powers rose to challenge it, most notably the Majapahit Empire based on Java. One by one, its vassal ports and trading partners shifted their allegiance until the network that defined the empire simply unraveled. The capital at Palembang was abandoned, its wooden structures rotting back into the jungle. The specific state apparatus, the intricate web of loyalties and administrations that held the thalassocracy together, dissolved. While the Malay people and their culture continued, the Srivijayan political entity vanished. Its legacy is felt in the widespread influence of Malay language and the deep roots of Buddhism in Indonesia. But the empire itself became little more than a half-remembered legend, a phantom power confirmed only by the scattered gold hoards and Chinese ceramics that modern archaeologists pull from the Sumatran mud. Our penultimate civilization takes us to the most remote island on Earth, where a society's story is told by the giant, silent faces it left staring inland from the coast. On a remote speck of land in the vast Pacific, a society carved its devotion into the very rock of the island. The early Rapa Nui people, descendants of Polynesian explorers who settled Easter Island around 300 to 400 years into the Common Era, achieved something extraordinary in their complete isolation. They transformed their entire landscape into a sacred monument to their ancestors, creating the moai, those colossal stone figures that stare with an eternal silence. Nearly 1,000 of these statues were carved from the volcanic rock of the Rono Raraku quarry, with some standing over 30 feet tall and weighing more than 80 tons. The logistics of carving and then transporting these giants across the island, without wheels or large animals, and erecting them on massive stone platforms called ahu, represents a staggering communal effort, a society unified by a powerful and complex belief system. This was more than an artistic tradition. It was the core of their identity, a form of ancestor worship where the moai likely represented lineage chiefs or important figures, their backs to the sea, watching over the living community. Their cultural achievements did not stop with stone. They developed a unique written script, rongo rongo, a system of glyphs carved onto wooden tablets. Yet this potential key to their world remains locked, for the script has never been deciphered, its meaning lost along with the priests who once chanted from these tablets. Then their world fell apart. The very drive that propelled their cultural fluorescence led to their undoing. To move the massive moai, they needed rollers and levers which required trees. Generations of relentless deforestation stripped the island bare. Without trees, the soil eroded, making farming increasingly difficult. Without large trees, they could no longer build the deep-sea fishing canoes that provided protein. The population, which had grown to perhaps 15,000, faced a catastrophic environmental collapse. The society fractured. The old religion, centered on the ancestor moai, lost its power when the ancestors seemed to offer no protection from the famine and conflict that followed. The statues, the very symbols of their unity, were violently toppled, deliberately broken at the neck. A new, more desperate cult emerged, the Birdman competition, where a leader was chosen based on who could first retrieve a sacred tern egg from a treacherous offshore islet. This was a stark shift from communal ancestor worship to a ritual focused on individual survival and a new source of divine favor. By the time European explorers arrived in the 18th century, they found a fraction of the population living in a ravaged landscape, the great civilization that built the moai already a ghost. Later slave raids and introduced diseases nearly finished the job, severing the last living links to the original culture. The rongo-rongo tablets are silent, the early social structure is forgotten, and the true meaning behind the moai's solemn gaze is a secret they have kept for centuries. They stand as a haunting, powerful lesson in the delicate balance between human ambition and the limits of an isolated world. Having journeyed across continents and millennia to explore these 25 vanished worlds, a pattern begins to emerge from the silence. From the silent moai of Rapa Nui to the abandoned libraries of the Hittites, a pattern of human fragility emerges from the ruins. The stories of these 25 civilizations reveal that their disappearances were rarely caused by a single, sudden event. Instead, they were often undone by a cascade of interconnected failures, a chain reaction where one vulnerability exposed the next. A common and devastating trigger was environmental change. Prolonged droughts crippled the Cahokians and the Ancestral Puebloans, turning their agricultural heartlands to dust. The Nazca and the Sabaeans saw their sophisticated water management systems fail them when the climate shifted. Deforestation, as seen so starkly on Easter Island and suspected at Cahokia, led to catastrophic soil erosion and the loss of vital resources, from building materials to deep-sea fishing canoes. And in the case of the Minoans, a single, colossal volcanic eruption delivered a blow from which their society could never recover. These environmental pressures almost always ignited social and political crises. A failing harvest inevitably leads to hunger, and hunger breeds unrest. The centralized authority that once built great pyramids and organized trade networks would lose its legitimacy when it could no longer provide for its people. We see this in the slow dissolution of the Zapotec state at Monte Albon and the fragmentation of the Xiongnu Confederacy. Internal conflict fractured societies from within, while economic disruption from shifting trade routes starved empires like Srivijaya and the Oxus Civilization of their lifeblood. In some cases, this internal weakness made them ripe for conquest or assimilation. The Minoans were absorbed by the Mycenaeans, the Caucasian Albanians by Islamic caliphates, and the Guanches by Spanish colonists. In each instance, the distinct cultural identity, the very soul of the civilization, was erased. A crucial thread running through nearly all these stories is the silence itself, the absence of a resilient written record. The Hittites had vast libraries, but when their language died, their history died with it. The Zapotecs and the people of the Indus Valley had scripts, but we cannot read them. The Kingdom of Kush left elegant inscriptions that remain a locked door. Without a written tradition that survives and can be understood, a civilization is incredibly vulnerable to being forgotten. Its history, laws, and literature vanish, and its material remains become anonymous puzzles. If a society is not telling its own story, then others will tell it for them, or worse, not tell it at all. These recurring themes form a powerful cautionary tale for our own global civilization. We see our own reflections in these ancient struggles with climate instability, resource depletion, and social inequality. The interconnectedness of our modern world mirrors the trade networks of the past, and our own reliance on complex systems makes us susceptible to similar cascading failures. The legacy of these vanished societies is not just a collection of mysteries to be solved. It is a profound reminder of the delicate balance required to sustain human achievement. They challenge us to look at our own world and ask if we are building a culture that is resilient enough to be remembered, or if we too are writing a story that could one day be found only in silent stones. These silent stones and undeciphered scripts speak to a universal truth, the profound transience of human cultures. Our journey through these 25 vanished worlds reveals that no society, regardless of its architectural genius or technological prowess, is immune to the slow creep of oblivion. From the planned streets of the Indus Valley to the lonely moe of Easter Island, these stories demonstrate that greatness is never a guarantee of longevity. The forces that unraveled them were often quiet and cumulative, a gradual fraying of the social and environmental fabric that held their world together. Their enduring mysteries, locked in ruins and unreadable languages, challenge us to look beyond the dominant narratives of history and recognize the incredible diversity of human experience that has been lost. They urge us to listen to the whispers from the past, not as distant echoes but as vital lessons. The archaeologist Joseph Campbell once reflected that myths are public dreams and dreams are private myths. In the scattered fragments of these vanished peoples, we are granted a fleeting glimpse into the shared dreams of all humanity, the universal yearning for meaning, order, and connection that transcends time. The legacy of these lost civilizations is a powerful call to stewardship. It reminds us that the careful management of our environment, the strength of our social bonds, and the diligent preservation of our knowledge are not abstract ideals, but the very foundations upon which a lasting culture is built. Their silence asks us what we are doing to ensure our own story does not one day become just another unanswered question for future generations to ponder. We would love to hear which of these lost civilizations you find most compelling. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this exploration, subscribe for more journeys into the hidden chapters of our past. Thank you for joining us as we listen to the echoes of these lost worlds.